Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merle Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us as we talk all things faith, family, and fitness. A special thanks to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency for their support of Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community one family at a time. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson, and I'm being joined by my lovely Miss Linda Hutchinson. Hi, Linda. How are ya?
Oh, I'm doing mighty fine.
Why do you have such a silly grin on your face?
Well, the same grin is on your face. And that is
yeah.
because and I was trying to do the math, it's somewhere around 17 weeks, so 140 days, something like that. We have been on a spring break that has never ended. And so
who would ever think that they'd want a spring break to end?
Holy cow. So we are excited that our kiddos, at least in Southeast Indiana, are back to school.
Yeah,
we
now
cannot be more excited.
So as we record this, we're trying to wrap up our first week of school, which is really just about 3 or so days. And so we're just praying that the weeks keep going. And so the worst news would be one of the kids coming home or something comes across the message board of saying we're closing. That would not be cool at this point.
I'm preparing myself for it, but I have prayed over the school year, our teachers, our students.
Yeah.
We had an awesome prayer event, and it was just an awesome time for the community to come together and just put their faith into action. And so I believe God is going to keep our kiddos in school because honestly, hon, for their mental health, they need to be in school, and they need to be around other kids and their teachers and community. So.
Well, hon, I just want to thank you because of the two of us, you are our prayer warrior. That is definitely, you even have a little prayer board right next to your little...
Did you see I updated it just the other day?
Yeah, I don't usually look at it. I feel like it's kind of a private thing. And so, but you are our prayer warrior in our home. And it was laid on your heart that we really do need to kind of bathe our community and our kids and stuff in some prayer, especially during this start. And you took the ball and you ran with it. And so... thanks for letting God talk to you and you responding.
Yeah.
So Lift 7 Up was a big hit. And, I think the cool thing, hon, is it doesn't have to be just in our community.
No.
We really need to be active as Christians about praying for what is really, in a lot of neighborhoods, it's kind of the core, it's the hub of that neighborhood. And in our area, our schools are the hub.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and Satan tried his best to throw up roadblocks and shut that idea down. And I really felt like the Lord was telling us it's time to gather. It's safely, of course, and people were very respectful with their masks and social distancing. We were outside in a parking lot of Bright Church. But, hon, even Satan tried to keep you away, and you had an emergency board meeting at the pregnancy center that you had to do, and so you couldn't even be there. But it was kind of like, we're not letting that stop us. We're going to continue just to move forward with what God has laid on our hearts, and it did. It was an awesome event, and I think that there's many more Lift 7 Up events to come. So, we're hoping that our communities just pray and lift up this new school year to the Lord and put it in his hands.
Yeah, so good stuff. All right, so today we are going to at least kind of introduce our topic, and then we'll do some of our other homework stuff. But today we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to have a marriage topic today. And I think, even though we do the podcasting and blogging and stuff, a lot of our listeners may not realize that we spend a big bulk of our time actually doing marriage and family coaching. And so... and it is always kind of interesting, hon. I don't know, just over time, you and I, we seem to have themes that come into our office, right? You have
recurring themes.
Why for the last 2 weeks have I had like 4 couples that have this issue going on, all right? And so I don't know exactly how that works, or maybe I'm just more sensitive to a particular topic when it seems to be arising. But one of the things that is going to be kind of the basis of this show, and just kind of hear me out, so we're not going to get into deep theology or anything like that, but this idea of just counting rights and wrongs and do's and don'ts and is it fair and is it equal and just measuring each other constantly. And I looked at one of our couples the other day and I said, I feel like you guys like have an Old Testament marriage, and they looked at me like, what?
What is that?
Yeah, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, you're all about the law. You're all about whether whether you're doing everything perfectly. And when one doesn't do it perfectly, then we got to measure it. And then we got to like have a fine for it and a penalty. And we got to hold each other hostage until it's paid. And it's like, that's Old Testament kind of thinking. And thank God that the New Testament came in where we finally recognized we're not going to be able to follow the law perfectly.
We're never going to measure up.
It's not going to measure up. And so we're going to just talk about that in terms of how that pertains to the marriage today. And I think you might be shocked, hon. You and I get stuck into Old Testament marriage stuff all the time. I mean, it's not about like how perfect we are because we even screw up the idea of showing each other grace.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be kind of our deal today.
Yeah. And hon, before we go any further, if you're listening to this and you're not married or you were married, honestly, this is an Old Testament way of thinking about life. And honestly, this is how I used to live my life as a believer. And so this was enlightening to me when I really understood the whole concept of grace and the desire to serve him. I'm never going to measure up. Yeah. And what does God do with that? And so I hope you'll listen regardless of your age or if you're married or not. There's some really important things I think we all need to learn.
And to not get this off subject, but I think it can be just spread through so many other things, even outside of the marriage, even with raising our kids.
Parenting,
as parents,
yeah, absolutely.
We really get trapped into whether our kids are doing everything right or following the rules.
Yep.
And that, again, we're going to go through this conversation. This is not about not having rules, but it is about understanding the balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, anyway, we're going to have some great conversation, and we're going to hopefully work through and make our marriages a little bit better today. So, before we go any farther, hon, how about running an ad for us?
Yeah, we need to pay some bills. We first want to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency. They have built their reputation and business on listening and caring and protecting their customers. Mansfield Insurance Agency began in 1981 by Jim Mansfield and is dedicated to serving individuals and businesses in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So if you have any kind of insurance need, call Mansfield at 1-800-230-3927.
All right. And so we also want to thank Maxwell Construction for being a proud sponsor of Rock Solid Radio. Maxwell Construction was founded in 1988 by John Maxwell. And since that time, they have grown and expanded to become among the most recognized construction companies in the tri-state area. What separates Maxwell Construction apart from their competition is their emphasis on being service-oriented to help meet the individual needs of their clients. So whether it's a school, hospital, restaurant, or apartment building, call Maxwell Construction at 812-537-2200.
Yeah. Hun, you were talking about doing marriage and family coaching, and just a reminder out there, if you're listening, that we do have an office in St. Leon, Indiana, but we really, thanks to the World Wide Web and the internet, we have the ability to really coach and help folks no matter where you live.
We are Zooming.
Honestly, hun, I was just going to tell you the last couple months, we have seen a huge uptick of people reaching out and people who are just feeling hopeless and overwhelmed and looking for help. And so some of them are emailing and texting and calling and, reaching out in Messenger. And it's crazy. Yesterday, hun, we had 5 new clients that reached out to us in one day. And so, not to mention our caseload.
I mean, we don't have a secretary, but we're getting close.
We're getting close. But the caseload already of those that we continue to see month by month. So please let us know if we can help you. But be patient if you call or message us. We are in session a lot of times, so we can't answer the phone right away, but we will get back with you as soon as we can and see what your needs are.
Yeah, our number is 812-576-7625. So give us a call. You can also reach out on our website at rocksolidfamilies.org. There's places to ask questions there, see what we're up to. There's always little tidbits of information in there, so please explore that. Yeah. Okay, hun, let's talk a little bit about what we're what we're getting into in terms of the Old Testament sort of thinking, or the rights and wrongs, the do's and don'ts in our marriage, okay? And just to give a little background without getting all silly and crazy, why do we have laws? Well, I mean, back in Old Testament time, as the numbers began to grow under Moses' watch, we also started to see people just do what people do. Becoming selfish, becoming somewhat mean, becoming nasty, basically seeking their own fleshly desire.
That kind of sounds like us today.
Yeah. And Moses is about ready to pull his hair out, and he's like wondering what the heck. And so finally he gets from on high the 10 Commandments, okay? Now what's interesting about the 10 Commandments is that they're really pretty broad-based and very clean and simple, okay? By the time the end of the Old Testament is written, we have over 630 rules, laws, or commandments. And here's why this is important. Every time, by our human nature, we have a rule. What do we like to do with it?
Yeah, we want to take it to the limit, right?
Yeah, we want to bend it. We want to tweak it. We want to look for a loophole in it. We want to stretch it. And so that does not change. To this day, I don't even want to know how many laws and rules there are across this world. Okay? Because that's why we have legislative branches of government, because times change and we have to say, okay, well, the basic idea was you don't steal, but now let's talk about all the other ways that you could steal, okay?
Right. Yeah.
And so it gets to be just crazy, and you can't keep up with it, and so constantly you're developing entire police forces to help manage it, legal systems and judges, and finally, New Testament came.
Yeah.
All right. Can you explain just a little bit to our listeners why that was so important?
Yeah, I mean, and let's be clear, rules are not bad. We need them to help us know and understand how to navigate in society. But there's always a problem, and that's that we keep breaking the rules, that we never measure up. We always we fall, we fail, and so we're never going to be good enough. And so it was almost as if God was setting us up for the understanding that we would not measure up, and we were not enough on our own. And that's where Jesus came in, and Jesus came to say, I'm going to fill in the gaps. I'm going to be the one that is enough. Not you. You never will be, but I am enough. And so put your trust in me. And he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, that no one gets to the Father except through me. And so his point is there in the New Testament is that he covers it for us.
Yeah.
He takes our place.
You don't, you're not going to have enough money to pay all your fines for all the rules you break, right? You're not going to be able to serve enough days in prison or confinement to pay it back because it just keeps growing and growing, and it can get so minuscule, right? Like, oh my gosh, so now I've got a fine for this and a fine for that, and it gets to be overwhelming. And that's why, hey, let's cover this once and for all.
Yeah. When I was in the seminary, I took one of my favorite classes by Dr. Jack Cottrell. And if he's listening, Dr. Cottrell, I appreciate you and just your explanation of this, because I still remember it to the day. But the class was called The Doctrine of Grace. So he was explaining to us about the Old Testament way of living and the laws and the rules that we can never measure up and we would always fall short. And then the New Testament way of living of grace. And he said it like this, is if we had gone to the judge and we broke a law, and the judge looks at us and says, you are guilty, but you're justified by faith. And so he's saying it's just as if you didn't break the law. Right. And it was literally like, I'm going to pay the penalty for you. It's not that you're not guilty. You did break the law. Okay. And so that's where the laws come in. Like, you do need to follow the right way. But he's saying that I take your place of your punishment. I am filling the gap in for you. And that's Jesus.
Which is so important because it allows us to get back out on the field and keep playing.
Versus
being restricted and confined by the bondage of our troubles. Okay. And so we're going to take this into the marriage. And again, why the theme comes up, I don't know. But like I've said, I've got multiple couples coming in and they're just beating each other up on whether they are actually measuring up. Okay. And it just, I felt like, you know what? I think a lot of folks need to hear this.
Yeah.
A lot of marriages need to
Well,
hear this.
and you're kind of saying what I say a lot in a different way is take your spouse off the pedestal. She's not the one to be worshipped. She can't measure up. He can't measure up. So don't put them in that position of perfection and there's some people out there listening like, oh, my spouse ain't perfect, that's for sure. But we
well,
treat
yours
them,
is, hon.
well, yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
you know.
But we treat them that way, or
Yeah.
we expect them to be that way.
Yeah.
They're not. They're going to forget the milk, as I've said before. And so why are you going to crucify them every time they fail you?
Yeah, they're never going to be able to survive. So a few little things about like, okay, well, how bogged down is my marriage into this way of thinking? Okay, and here's some just quick little checks, to see, wow, do we
Old
need
Testament way of thinking.
Old
Yeah.
way. They're like, okay, is my thinking pattern? Am I kind of stuck?
Yeah.
In this way? Do you and your spouse find each other frequently upset with each other? Frequently, okay? Like, not like once every now and then, but like, man, there's always tension. There's always tension.
Do you look for them to mess up?
Oh, man.
Like, are you trying to catch them?
I can't wait for them. Yeah.
Oh, there's your shoes. That you left them out.
Yeah, yeah,
You did forget the milk.
Waiting for them to screw up so that we can say, I told you so, or I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this? How about quick with a harsh word back at them, like being snippy or sharp with them, okay? Or even worse, we see a lot of times, how about this? The silent treatment.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I'm ticked off. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
That way I'm
going to punish you.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you hostage
Yeah.
by being out of relationship with me.
Speaking of holding hostage, sometimes, hon, we do that with sex in marriage, of course. And so if we're upset with our spouse, we're just not going to give you what you want.
Yeah, and we find that a lot. That it is because it's a tangible, right? It's something that we can actually feel and participate in.
Easy now.
Whoa, that's a different topic. But that whole idea that you know what, I'm not going to give and share that to you right now because I'm going to hold you hostage.
Yeah.
How about this, hon? This is a term that we've been. You and I have talked about this for years. When you hear phrases 50-50.
Right, yeah. Like, this is the line, and I'm not going to cross it. I'm not going to do your job of taking the garbage out because that's your job. You're not going to do the dishes because that's my job. And so we can't use that thought of 50-50. We have to go in 100%, 100%. Are we always going to be able to give 100%? No. But the goal has got to be, I'm giving everything I've got. I'm not holding back. And that's where the marriage starts to work and to really bloom.
Yeah. How about this? This is one that we see a lot. Are you a stickler for being right or getting the last word? Are you a stickler for trying to prove your point or to make your argument? Like, will you go separate and actually go to your phone and Google the right answer if it supports you so you can show it back to your spouse? Okay? How about that? Oh, boy, we see those kinds of things.
No, I will admit, I've been guilty of that before.
Well, we both have. We both have. And that's why this is, when we recognize it, we're like, wow.
Yeah.
And so let's kind of surmise why this is so dangerous, okay? And again, this is why we're Christian, because all of a sudden it was made clear and refined in a way that we could understand through Scripture. In Romans 3:9-12. And I want to read this in a way that we understand why we're always going to be screwed up here, okay? It says, well then, we should conclude that we Jews are better than others? No, not at all. For we have already shown that all people, whether Jews or Gentiles, are under the power of sin. As the Scriptures say, no one is righteous, not even one. No one is truly wise. No one is seeking God. All have turned away. All have become useless. No one does good, not a single one. Yeah. Man, that's kind of humbling. Like, get off your high horse.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The Old Testament thinking will only lead you to frustration and failure. It's for this reason, hon, that Christ came to show us a better way. And so we really want to spend the rest of our time today talking about that better way. And so we're not here to be negative Nelly. We're here to try to help you see and kind of open your eyes to what it is that maybe you're doing that's causing that frustration and that feeling of, hey, they're not meeting my needs or expectations. So let's talk about that New Testament, that new way of thinking about our marriage, and really any other relationship. It could be a boss, it could be a kid, it could be a friend. Are we holding them hostage in the old way of thinking?
Yeah, so to keep on running through some of Romans, and I talk about Romans here in the idea that it's worth exploring for your marriage's sake, because it kind of brings to light what we do struggle with as humans, okay? Mm-hmm. And so the second part of this in Romans 3:21 through 24 kind of sets the stage with how we have to start a different mindset in the marriage, okay? And that just says, but now God has shown us a way to be made right with him without keeping the requirements of the law, as was promised in the writings of Moses and the prophets long ago. We are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who we are. So back up. We're not going to be able to carry the law out perfectly,
right?
But we're made right through our faith through Christ. Yep. In other words, believing that what Christ did is going to cover us and allow us to stay in the game, not be stuck in our bondage.
Exactly.
Our bondage from paying the price for constantly screwing up.
Yep.
Okay.
And I didn't get this because honestly, honey, growing up, I really felt like I was climbing this ladder toward heaven, and I would climb, and then I'd mess up and I'd slide back down. And I'd climb some more. And that is the exhausting way of living that's never going to be fulfilling, because you're never going to get there on your own. That ladder, if you looked at the end of the ladder, doesn't reach to heaven. Like there's a gap there. And that gap is only filled by Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So finally, the word for that is grace, right? Being covered by God's grace. And so that's that in verse 24 of that section, just talking about yet in God's grace.
Yeah.
Okay, so grace is, like I explained to our couples, forgiveness is good. Forgiveness is really good, right? We want to forgive because that takes away my reason to avenge, to seek revenge, to get rid of my hostility towards the other person. So forgiveness is good. But grace says, come back out on the field and keep on playing.
Yep.
You're not going to be held in bondage from that. And so grace keeps us playing. Forgiveness allows our brain to be free of just carrying the weight. But now I don't want you to carry the weight. I want you to get back out and start playing again.
Yeah. So, like you said, Romans 3:23, for everyone has sinned and falls short of the glory of God. And then 24 says, yet God in his grace freely makes us right in his sight. And so that's the point. Everyone falls short. You can't beat someone else up. You can't really beat yourself up because we're all in this boat together. And so grace is where it's found.
And this is... So think about this, how we as people walk through and measure ourselves constantly, okay? Even when I screw up, I'm like, well, at least I'm not as bad as that guy.
Yeah.
Or at least, and we start to compare each other. So if I mess up around the house, I'm like, well, I messed up, but guess what you did the other day?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? And so
Tit for tat.
That's right. That's our human nature. I think it's kind of interesting in the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector in Luke. Just listen to how this is how our self-righteousness prayer goes. Okay, this is so cool. Please listen to this because I got my name in here somewhere and I'm trying to work to get it out. Okay, it says, then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer. Now you got to listen to this. Okay, this is his prayer.
This isn't anybody
out there. I thank you, God, that I am not like other people. Cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give you 1/10 of my income. Wow.
That's a man living under the law.
That's right. I might not be perfect, but I'm not as bad as so-and-so.
Exactly.
Boy, how about that in our marriage?
Exactly.
I know I'm not perfect, but I'm not as bad as you, honey.
Right. But the tax collector in verse 13 stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed instead. He beat his chest in sorrow, saying, "O God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner. I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified," there's my word,
there it is,
"before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted."
Man.
It's about humility.
It is. It's about humility. So let's roll this into our marriage. Let's talk about the real nuts and bolts of what this looks like, so that we can understand why this New Testament thought process in our mind is so much better for our marriage.
Hey, as we talk about some of these practical steps, hon, I would hope that you, if you're listening, you get a piece of paper out and you're making a notes for yourself. Not that you're going to share this message for your spouse needs to hear it, but it's for you, because
coming
the point
home from work today and this is queued up on the radio.
Exactly, because the point is, and one of the verses in the Bible talks about your plank in your own eye before you notice the speck in your spouse's eye. So this is for you. We're talking about ourselves first and what we can do to change and improve our marriage.
All right, so get ready, get your fork out, get your plate. You're going to eat some humble pie, okay? So the very first thing that we want you to do in your marriage is to put yourself in your proper place, okay? You are not perfect. Just like, hon, you just said, get rid of the plank before you look at the speck. Okay, you're not perfect. You're filled with insecurities and weaknesses. Yeah, you have strengths, okay, but you are not perfect. So put yourself in your own humble, proper place. And I ask both of you to do that. This is a good time where both of you do listen to this show, because if one does it and the other one doesn't, it becomes exhausting.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, it does. It does. Recognize and admit your own areas of weaknesses and insecurities. Get to work on yourself. What can you do to be a better follower of Jesus Christ in your marriage? Not worry about what your spouse is doing or not doing.
Okay, another thing, hon, that I think is really cool is us understanding that the cool thing about the message of Christ is that he did not come to be served, but he came to serve.
Yeah.
And when you are in this marriage, instead of thinking how you keep coming up short with getting what you want and how the other person is doing you wrong, we're not called to operate in our marriage that way. We are called to say, what do I need to do for you, babe?
Yeah.
Well, how can I serve you? How can I help?
Yeah.
And both of us doing that.
Right. And not the way you feel. Like, perfect example, hon, is that when I would go to the grocery, I did the grocery shopping, and you would say, hey, can you buy some Diet Coke? We're at Diet Coke. And I would go to the store. Well, Diet Coke wasn't on sale.
I would never say Diet Coke.
Well,
I want Diet Pepsi, and you would always buy that Diet Coke.
Oh, is that's
the way the story went. Yeah.
And so, you wanted Diet Pepsi, but Diet Coke was on sale. And so I would buy Diet Coke because that's what's on sale, even though I knew you preferred Diet Pepsi. And so that's that rule of, well, it's $1 cheaper to buy this, but man, why don't I serve and encourage you the way you want, not the way I think is best, but the way you like it. Even if it cost me $1 more, man, it just shows, because here's the deal. We would argue about Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi because, and why? Because I was so obstinate about my preference or saving $1 versus serving you. Yeah,
and I'm just as guilty. I mean, I would tease you about you love your iced tea, and I would go and get I don't know if I should say it, but I'd get you some regular iced tea.
Yeah.
And you would look at it and go, it's not Dunkin'. Because you love your Dunkin' iced tea. And I was like trying to argue, like, oh, come on, are you serious? It's tea. I did a favor for you. And it's like, no, I did that out of just trying to get my own pat on the back.
Right.
I did not do that in a way to serve you.
But on my end, I can't look at you and crucify you because Dunkin' wasn't around you and McDonald's was. Man, on both ends. So from my end, it's like, come on, appreciate the fact what he did. Maybe it's the only thing in game in town. It wasn't that you chose that over that. And so I appreciate what you did do, not what you didn't do.
But and it's awesome. But when you know what really motivates and inspires and encourages your spouse, don't shortcut it.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed though that Dunkin' motivates me.
We're trying to get a sponsorship,
especially
from Dunkin',
in the morning.
Yeah. All right. So I think those are huge things. How about this one here? How about the whole idea of forgiveness is great, but grace is even better.
Yeah.
That whole idea, we have to forgive. Otherwise, we're stuck. We're stuck in a tension of anger and frustration.
Yeah. I think this is an important place, hon, to kind of talk a little bit about the whole tension that there is between grace and truth. We are not minimizing the need for rules and minimizing the desire to do the right thing. We want couples to do the right thing. We think that that's important to have guardrails up in your marriage to guide you on a good path into righteousness. But that can't be the end of the game. That can't be the reason why you do it. And so there's this tension between grace and truth. And the reality is that Jesus Christ was able to do both 100%. We are not Jesus. We are not God. And so there's always going to be this difficulty for us to balance the two. And sometimes that's why, hon, love looks tough. That tough love. And so that's where you have to have natural consequences for people's actions. I'm working with one wife whose husband is in prison for many, many DUIs. And the reality is there's consequences for his actions. But there's still that opportunity to love her husband, but not let him off the hook for the responsibilities of what he's done. And so there is this tension, and that tension between grace and truth, and we've talked about it before, is love. Loving our spouse, loving our kids, even when they fall short, even when they mess up. And that's where we've got to really be careful.
I think it's huge, hon. The idea that love is the glue, right? Love is sacrificial, as you said. It's not always easy. And let's be clear too. When we make mistakes in our marriage or in life in general, we have to make it right. So there is, that's why the law is there. We have to say, I own that, and I want to pay that back, okay? Because that's how we keep the trust. That when I see your heart, like, wow, this bothers you enough that you do want to make it right and restore that, okay? Grace is what the other person gives you to allow you the opportunity to do it, okay? And if you don't extend the grace, then the guy finally says, well, there's no sense in me even trying to restore this, okay? And that's when we quit. That's when the marriage falls apart, okay?
When you think of 50-50, hon, versus 100-100, I look at 100% is unconditional. Unconditional love, unconditional respect. Doesn't mean there's not natural consequences for actions, but 100%, and it's so hard. We're not going to make it all the time 100%, but that's our goal. That's our goal, is 100% of unconditional love, unconditional respect for one another.
So another way of looking at this is always understanding that, okay, you got married, so priority in terms of how we make decisions. Marriage is first. What I do, like my actions I'm getting ready to do. Before I say, well, I want to go do this and this and this and this today, I need to run it through my filter of, well, what does the marriage, what does the family need today?
Box.
And so once I make sure that my marriage part is covered, then I start saying, okay, what do I want to do for me? So set the self is second to the marriage, and that is hard, especially with our younger couples, because if they had a few years of being single and free, and then they get married, and then the weekends of softball tournaments and all these things, and they're going out on trips with my friends. These are the things that you go, oh, wow. And nobody ever said never to those things. What they said is priority.
Right. And showing your spouse that you are the they are the priority. And our second show of Rock Solid Families, we said the secret to a healthy relationship is asking the question, how can I help? Serving one another. And so if we show that, hey, you are a priority in my life, then it really does go far.
Okay, and so as we're starting to kind of wind things down, we're just talking about that whole understanding of what Christ did for us. Christ is often considered to be the groom, and the church is the bride, and the idea of those two working in harmony for each other. What Christ did was sacrificial. What the church does is very much in service and worship back to Christ.
There's out there people listening, the church is us. We are the bride of Christ. And so we make up the collective body of Christ, the church. But when it comes down to it, you and I are the bride of Christ.
Yes, and working to keep that in harmony with how Christ would want us to operate. So a couple of things as we kind of narrow things down. Be mindful of your counting of rights and wrongs and holding each other kind of hostage and what's fair and what's equal. Be mindful of that. Start to, just from our talk today, just think, wow, man, how often am I getting trapped in that, okay? You said this before, operate from how can I serve you today? Think about being a servant today, okay? Very powerful stuff if I'm going to operate from, okay, what do I need to do? What can I do for you? And you obviously thinking the same way for me.
Always be aware of how you're building trust, how you're investing, how you're making deposits in your relationship. Don't keep making withdrawals. You are going to have times where you're going to make withdrawals. There's illnesses and crises, but when you can, anytime, make investments to build that trust and forgiveness and grace with each other.
And I think this is critical, especially when we're dealing with people who have already struggled in their marriage. And frequently that's happened because someone felt like they were not getting treated properly or right, and then they lost trust in that other person. Like, I don't trust that that person's got my best interest at heart, okay? And so that whole idea of being a trust builder, of like, I want to be very aware. Like you said, I am going to mess up, but I want to be very aware of how important it is to keep building that trust. My words got to mean something.
Right.
My actions have to mean something. And I can't quickly dismiss, like when I do screw up, we know one screw up can take years to rebuild when it comes to trust.
But I will tell you, trust is built a lot faster when you own it.
Yeah.
When you don't argue it, justify it, rationalize it, dismiss it away. When you own it and admit and be remorseful, much more likely to extend grace and to build that trust back up.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we are going to wrap up with our challenge. Hopefully, a lot of this stuff, if it clicked, which it did to me as I went through it, okay? And so that just means I got to be a little bit more aware of how I'm treating you, hon, and how I think about our marriage. But for our challenge for this week, you remember I don't even know, it was probably somewhere it became a Hallmark card day or something, but random acts of kindness day. Our challenge this week is to say, you know what, I'm going to put away all of my tentious thinking, my just record keeping, and I'm going to actively do something, that's awesome for you today.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a random act of kindness.
And honestly, you can't brag about it. You can't boast yourself and pat yourself on the back.
Guess what I'm going to do for you today, huh?
You just do it. You just do it, and then you do it again, and you do it again. Not out of expectation of something back. As a matter of fact, you don't want anything back. You just want to do this.
I'm not trying to buy.
Right. Or one up.
Yeah.
One up.
Yeah.
For
so
sure.
We are just going to think about how we can serve and do something better that shows that we really have our spouse up as a priority in our life. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, quick reminder of, let's drop those rights and wrongs, and let's talk about being a servant, and let's always keep trust as a major of building a factor that I want to be aware of, and always forgive. Always show grace.
Yeah, 100%. As we close, we want to thank again our sponsors for today's show. A huge thank you to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency. Please let them know how much you appreciate this programming and the difference it's making in your life. Hun, this was an important show, not just for marriage, but for all relationships. So we hope you'll share it with your family and friends. Hun, you want to sign us out?
Yep, sure will. So thanks again for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard on today's show, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency. If you have questions you'd like answered on our show, or you want to chime in on something you heard, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merle and I, thanks for tuning in to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time.